we will have the case study of one of the industries, and I would like to invite to present the paper entitled The Early Impact of COVID-19 on Tourism Industry, Assessment of Egyptian Tourist Supply Chain. And I think we have two presenters. Please let me check, because the authors are Alaa Abdelsalam and Chehab Elbelehy. So please, the floor is yours and 20 minutes at your disposal. Hello.
Okay. Just a moment. Yes.
Please, oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My presentation today is about the early impact of COVID-19 on tourism industry, assessment of Egyptian case. This paper is submitted by Chehab Elbelehy, José, Crispim, and myself, Alaa Abdelsalam. I will start with a small introduction about the background of the topic. COVID-19, declared as a pandemic by WHO on 12 of March 2020, significantly impacts the global economic, political, socio-cultural systems. However, tourism is a highly vulnerable industry to numerous environmental, political, socio-economic risks, example, terrorism, earthquakes, Ebola, and SARS. The unique impacts of and circumstances of the COVID-19 demonstrate signs that this crisis have a deep and long-term transformational and structural changes to tourism as socio-economic industry. The purpose of my research is that discuss the effect of COVID-19 on tourism industry in general and on Egypt in particular, and a review of the emerging literature to better understand, manage both the tourism impacts and transformational affordance of COVID-19, and to simulate knowledge development in tourism sector. To achieve purpose of this paper, first, the paper discussed the impact of COVID-19 as an international tourism disruption by investigating the circumstances of different tourism sectors affected by the pandemic. Then the paper continues by discussing the major impacts, behaviors, and experience of COVID-19 on selected tourism supply chain members. Then the paper provides a rapid assessment of the reported procedures of three major tourism stakeholders in Egypt: the tourism demand, tourism supply, and government and policymakers. During three COVID-19 mitigation strategies, which are response, recovery, and restart, to the end of March 2020. Finally, summarizing the early resilient practices to tourism industry in over 2020 and beyond, which I found in the literature on different sites. The design of my research is that the paper based on an overview of the relevant literature on travel and tourism industry, as well as hospitality service trends. Findings of this paper is to provide an overview of the COVID-19 tourism impacts and implications, and also suggest mitigation strategies for tourism research. COVID-19 and is as an international tourism disruption could be categorized as a combination of natural disasters, socio-political, economic, and tourism demand crisis. Actually, aspects of COVID-19 are not new to us. Tourism studies on SARS, the bird flu, Ebola, and influenza pandemics show comparable patterns on smaller scale. Also, there are similarities between coronavirus-induced economic crisis and that of 2008 economic crisis, and also between the political aspects of the coronavirus pandemic and tourism aspects during the Arab Spring uprising and the refugee crisis. COVID-19 tourism impacts are uneven also in time and space. The economic consequences are expected to vary across countries depending on the spread and intensity of pandemic and associated government responses, as will be shown during the presentation. Within countries, the virus affected virtually all parts of the hospitality value chain. As the impact of cancelled events, closed accommodation, shut down attractions became immediately felt in other parts of the supply chain, such as catering, laundry service, restaurants, in addition to all the sectors on which tourism has important multiplier effects, including civil aviation, handicrafts, and many other food and beverage provisions. I will make a small slide about tourism in Egypt in general, the value of tourism in the Egyptian company and the Egyptian economy. Tourism is one of the important industries in Egypt, as it presents 15% of the total contribution to GDP and 11% of the total Egyptian investments, and also 9.5% of the total employments. Egypt enjoys various fields of tourism attraction. The most important are archaeological, cultural tourism, which is one of the oldest types of tourism in Egypt, in addition to beach tourism, religious tourism, therapeutic tourism, sports, and etc. Also, Europe is one of the top 10 markets for arrivals in Egypt, and Egypt topped several times as the best tourist destination for 2020. How the story begins in Egypt for COVID-19. The first official case of COVID-19 in Egypt was reported on 14th February during a Nile cruise. The confirmed case of an American tourist abroad, the cruise led to other positive confirmed cases. In March 2020, tourists declined. In March 2020, with COVID-19 beginning to spread in Europe, tourism declined sharply in Egypt, between 70 and 80% of hotel bookings being cancelled. According to Tourism and Antique Minister Khalid Al-Anani, Egypt was looking to lose approximately 1 billion US dollar every month due to travel restrictions in and out of the country. This figure shows a decline for Egypt. This figure shows the decline share of tourism as percentage of GDP and in total percentage of experts, and shows absence share of international guests in Egypt during this period, the beginning especially of COVID-19 in Egypt. This table shows the effect of impact of COVID-19 on selected tourism supply chain members. The most important are the massive for accommodation. The most important are the massive cancellation of many hotel bookings, which reached 70 and 80% of hotels. Also, the refunds of some cancellation booking according to the government regulations. For the transportation part, the government also grounded flights coming in and out of the country. Travel agents and tour operators were also obliged to refund fees to cancel Umrah visits. Not only this, but also online travel agencies and online booking platforms are also being hit by crisis due to the significant slowdown in transactions. Restaurants increase social spacing in eating establishment, limit their activity to delivery only in some instances, or entirely shut down activities. They were also obliged to close early every day. This is the part of restaurants and food supply chain. And for tourism businesses, they suffer also from this. They suffered huge financial losses due to the crisis, due to closure of touristic sites and cancellation of many major events in Egypt. For the impact of COVID-19 on the three major stakeholders under three stages, which are respond, recovery, and restart stages from the pandemic. For the tourism demand, I will go through demand, supply, and governments. For the tourism demand, the response phase include trip cancellation, loss of money, loss of travel loyalty benefits, use of technology for the crisis alerts. And for the recovery, excess use of technology apps for contactless services, shopping, working, and information updates. Also through multifunctional home like remote working, virtual social behavior, including virtual entertainment, parties, visualization of destination and attractions. For the restart phase, mainly experiencing a new tourism service, including digital services, distinct technology solutions, free management solutions, and new hygiene standards. Then tour operators. I start with the response stage, which focus on reducing operations, changing reservation policy, shifting to online shopping. And for the recover, main purpose is to ensure business continuity while reducing hotel means of transportation occupancy to 50%, reducing workforce and train them to deal with the crisis. For the restart phase, main aim is to build resilience through restoring travelers' confidence, pricing promotion, social media, targeting the younger segments. Government and policy makers. During the response phase, the priority during this phase is to ensure health, safety, and security of all tourists as well as staff working in tourism sector. While in the recover phase, the government has promoted coexistence plan. This plan is to maintain anti-coronavirus measures while resuming activities. Also, this plan includes inspecting hotels, reducing number of visitors in destination, cash transfer to working families in tourism, hotline for tourism problems. The restart phase, government introduce new initiatives, online campaigns, number of measures facilitating travel to Egypt to strengthen market competitiveness and to promote inbound tourism from various source markets. Okay, then COVID-19 and tourism resilience practices. The tourism sector is one of the most vulnerable industries as I begin my presentation, caused by this pandemic due to closing borders, imposing travel bans, travel cancellations as mentioned before, but also being an important part of many national economies creates further challenges for this sector of this pandemic may affect the wider economy. As a result, many countries are now entering a new phase in fighting the virus, while at the same time managing the reopening of the tourism economy. This, of course, a complex and a challenging task, as quantifying the impact on the tourism economy is so difficult in this phase. For example, cleaning robots nowadays are endowed with sensors measuring the quantity of dust in a specific area. So countries where domestic tourism already represents, let me show the new. Countries where domestic tourism already represents a significant portion of the tourism economy are thus likely to see recovery in sectors more rapidly than countries that are heavily dependent on international tourism flows. The focus of my study is the resilient practices in Egypt. In Egypt, the expectation is that domestic tourism offers the main chance for driving a recovery and supporting the tourism sector. Although domestic tourism flows have also been heavily affected by restrictions on the movement of people, but are expected to recover more quickly once control measures are lifted. The crisis represents an opportunity to rethink the tourism system in Egypt. Right. Rethink the tourism system in Egypt for a more sustainable and resilient future. Also reinventing the supply chain. The aim is to preserve those elements of the current struggle in short term that can serve a business for a more reactive and flexible operation in the future. At the end of my presentation, I would like to summarize the conclusion of my research. First, tourism is one of the most directly affected sector in this current crisis, and this calls for immediate and long-term responses. Secondly, although tourism business were among the first to be shut down following the introduction of measures to contain the virus, tourism activities are likely to be among the last to restart, and on a phased basis. Even when these businesses do open, it will be under new opportunity procedures. Third, the pandemic is also likely to have an impact to tourist behavior, impacting the resumption and recovery of domestic and international tourism. Fourth thing is that despite the sector's resilience in response to previous crises, the sheer depth and breadth of COVID-19 related impacts on tourism and the economy means a quick recovery is unfortunately unlikely. Last, reflecting the urgency of this situation, national efforts to mitigate the impact of the pandemic are working together to support the recovery of this sector. We depend mainly on the national efforts. And this is the last of my presentation.
Thank you very much for the interesting presentation, and really very important because you identify and we can get knowledge about the perspective of different stakeholders of this sector. So really very important point of view. Thank you so much, and congratulations for the research topic. Please, now there is a time for the questions from audience. Who would like to add a comment maybe? Mm-hmm. I ask for some comments from the audience regarding the industries, tourism industry in their countries. So two main strategies are domestic tourism and some support to use local tourism locations. Oh, I see the questions on the chat, so I would like to ask them. The first one, government and agencies may do all possible attempts. At the core of everything is the human who really care for life and death. So question is, how to inculcate trust and safe tourism among the domestics as well as international tourists? Oh, very important for human beings question. Do you see maybe via chat?
This is the government and agencies may do all possible attempts. This is at the core of everything is human who really care for life and death. So the question is how they inculcate trust and faith among the domestic as well as international. Yeah, this is actually done. Is being made by the government on TV campaigns and online campaigns targeting youth to visit locations in Egypt like Luxor and Aswan. Um, um, Location in Egypt that are most popular to use to flourish the domestic tourism in Egypt.
Okay. There is still one more question to you on our chat. Oh, sorry, it's rather a comment from Singapore.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question.
Please.
Okay. Dr. Alaa, is quite interesting. Again, it's very more on content analysis. I cannot see from the findings. Actually, I couldn't find like before and after when hit by COVID. So again, my comment is basically on how we can make sure that our work can be, one is published, one is considered justifiable. That's why I think not just a comment, but also for me, for my own knowledge as well, that when you do a research in regards to this, you have to showcase what is the percentage been affected before and after the COVID. Then we can see how important your work is. So from there, we can see sort of your work can help the government to strategize. Because from, for example, cruises, as I know, Egypt is one of the port that cruisers like to have the berth, they berth their cruises, the stop point. So you give this, yes, this is right, but I'm talking about Egypt alone.
Yeah,
The detail of Egypt, like for example, the main tourism area, because you are talking about Egypt. Your case study is about Egypt. So you have, I think, like 4 or 5 area are tourist prone area. So when you do sort of like a critical analysis on that, it will be very interesting. That's my comment, because yes, you said is 1 billion every month due to travel restriction. This fine is from outside world to Egypt, but when we're talking about the hubs of the tourism center, because what I understand from your title and the concept of your studies is talking how it impact from each, I can say each areas or each hubs of tourism center or tourism centric affected by COVID. Just to share with you, for example, I'm from Malaysia. So we have tourism centric, for example, Borneo. We have Sabah and Sarawak, which we have a very high percentage from outside. And then in Peninsular Malaysia, Langkawi, the islands. So we can focus those areas, how it affected by this kind of pandemic disruption. I hope you get what I mean, because you are talking about a case study of Egypt tourism, and I was like listening to you and try to get an idea, and then I try to understand at least you have what we call it a qualitative analysis from tourism, the operator, the cruises operator, the agent. So it's kind of to showcase the case study. So I cannot see that from your presentation. Sorry, because I'm still like trying to understand in empirical manner.
Yeah, I got your point. Actually, this paper was prepared on August, but this is part of my PhD studies, so I continue preparing a survey covering what you mean, focusing on different parts in Egypt and different supply chain members, how they are affected, and diagrams on each hub in Egypt, focusing on tourism.
Okay, so you are still in the field work, or you already gather the data?
Yeah, getting the data. I'm still getting more data. This report was only literature from. I didn't get it from survey or something like that. I'm already in the phase of preparing the survey.
Oh, I see. Okay, so meaning that you are so what type of framework you are using in order to get that survey? Because I couldn't get from your paper right now. If you're saying this is your maybe your literature review, but what you get the most critical variables that will help to make your survey. That's what I'm trying to be very constructive to you, Alaa, because as I said, is I cannot see the development of the conceptual framework. What are the variables that affecting the other variables? Because you are building it up to your survey, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
at least you have an idea, share with us what are the main construct that you found when you do this paper and what it helps you to do your survey.
Yes, actually, I didn't have this on this laptop, but I distinguish in my survey between capabilities and vulnerabilities of the tourism sector in Egypt with many variables concerning each part of this. Um, this is what I'm preparing, and also another survey concerned with the mitigation strategy of every member of the supply chain in Egypt.
Oh, okay. So, okay. A bit clear, Barbara. Okay. So I help you because as I said, it's not clearly constructed because you're doing PhD, right? So it have to be constructed to your survey design. So your basically the conclusion of your presentation showcase that framework, the what are the critical factor affecting tourism industry that you're going to test. That's what I want to get from you actually, Alaa. So all of us can help you to assist you whether it's too general or too very, it's not conclusive and whatnot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your support and really valuable remark to Alaa. Alaa, thank you very much. And we all wish you all the best and for your PhD preparation and defense in the near future. So good luck. Thank you very much for sharing your research findings with us.